Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Andrew Miller, joined by my co-host Christian Ballard, and this is number 17 of. I guess we've done a lot more than 17 shows. It's just this is the normal show. But I don't know
Yeah, we've
what we're
done
at
some
now with.
call-ins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
we've
the
done some
call-ins, with
call-ins.
the post game, we've had a lot more than 17 shows at this point. But this
Yeah.
shows up as Mississippi State Live 17 because that's our typical Monday show. But yeah, we're back at it and on to Tennessee week. Your Mississippi State Bulldogs 4-0 on the season after getting their win over Northern Illinois. Sloppy first half, but pull away in the second half. We may have some closing thoughts on that game here in just a bit. But obviously, time to look ahead to what is the biggest game in Starkville in a long time. There's not been an opportunity like this around Mississippi State in quite a few years. At this point, should be a whole lot of excitement. Should be a fun week looking ahead to Mississippi State versus Tennessee, and that's what we're here to do tonight. For those of you join us, if you could, give us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, turn that notification bell on so you do know when we do go live, and if you could share the channel, share the stream, we would greatly appreciate it. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to get into SEC play this week. We got the Vols, and they're coming to Starkville, and it should be a good matchup. Just to kind of give my thoughts, because I know you do the post game, so I'm not really ever on that because of work and stuff, unless we get a super late game. But just to kind of give my thoughts on the Northern Illinois game, I've had about 48 hours to watch some highlights and go back and watch it. Thought State looked pretty good. 38-10 victory, 3-0 at home, 4-0 overall on the season. It was pretty interesting just to watch it. NIU we had talked about was going to be probably a little bit of a challenge. They've had some good teams in recent years, been able to pull some upsets. And NIU, to their credit, looked actually like a pretty decent team in this game. They had a 24-yard touchdown in the second quarter. They had a 30-yard field goal back in the first quarter, but credit to State's defense to hold off and shut them out in the second half and pull away. And they won by 28 points comfortably, 38-10, scoring 10 in the third and 14 points being two touchdowns in that fourth and final quarter. Now they turn the page, open SEC play, Tennessee week. Show us what you got, Vols.
Yeah, in terms of closing thoughts on NIU for me, and also before we forget, because we're going to start getting into Tennessee, we do have to talk about the big news around the SEC today that'll be made official tomorrow evening. But obviously, we kind of know the news, so we'll get into it here just in a second. But look, Mississippi State did not play their best. It is possible that this was a little bit of a look ahead spot. It was a little bit of a weird game. Just the fact, we didn't even talk about it in the post game, that State did not receive the opening kickoff, which was the first time in the Jeff Levy era that had happened. It was also the first time going back to like a few games, I think at the end of Zach Arnett's tenure, or just the 2023 season, since Arnett didn't close that out. So a little bit weird because State's been so used to getting the ball first and then being able to go right down the field and score. And they did go down the field and score, but they were down because NIU was able to go and put together a good drive to open up the game. And State's defense toughened up once NIU kind of got down to the red zone and was able to hold them to a field goal there. Look, as I talked about in the post game, State, this could have been a little bit of a different game, if not for – it could have been a different game in a couple of different ways. For one, Mississippi State missed a lot of opportunities to put points on the board with Blake Shapen just missing receivers open down the field. Talking Mississippi State and Natty. Yeah, absolutely. This team's 100% for the national.
It's funny to me. You know who that is my co-host of one of my shows is Mayhem Matthew right there. Y'all go check him out. He does a lot of good interviews and stuff, but we do a Touchdowns Live show. And, of course, he's here to ask a bunch of questions that we obviously know the answers to. So thank you, Mayhem.
Yeah, like Mississippi State winning the national championship. Take it to the bank. It's 100%
Yeah.
happening.
Let's go.
Yeah,
but
look.
I already bet on it.
State left some points off the board with Shapen just kind of missing some opportunities downfield. Run blocking was kind of sloppy in the first half, and they had a lot of penalties that got in their own way. So if State had played a clean game and just executed better, they could have pulled away. Knowing that they didn't execute well, as I talked about, there was a couple pivotal plays in the second half defensively where, State gets an interception that kind of changes the game with that, Oh, Talking Mayhem actually brings up something I do want to talk about on the post. Thank you for bringing that up because I actually wanted to talk about that on the show.
He trolls, but he's accurate there. He trolls a little,
I
but
mean, Ryan
he's
on my
on
statement
point.
rank. I do
I
have.
mean, I don't.
But
I think though,
go ahead.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait to see if they beat Tennessee. If they beat Tennessee and still don't get ranked, something's wrong. But I mean, we've had a couple small opponents here or there. We have the big win over Arizona State, but you know what? It is what it is. They're 4-0. They're climbing up the ladder.
My issue is not with State not being ranked; it's with other teams that are. So I'll talk about that
Right.
here in a second. I'm glad to get another little bit of a topic to have, but State left opportunities off the board, but knowing some of the sloppiness, that interception that Isaac Smith makes, which is a great play by Smith and a game-changing play because NIU was about to get into the end zone potentially, and that was after State had opened up the second half, going on a touchdown drive to go up 21-10. Okay, they're going to pull away, but then NIU puts together a good drive, and it looks like all right, they're about to put points on the board too. This is going to be a one-score game once again. You get the big interception. State gets away with blatant defensive holding on that pick. I don't remember which player was in coverage on the receiver downfield, but man, that was as blatant a jersey grab as you'll ever see, and it wasn't called. And later there's a fourth down that NIU goes for, and I think he clearly had it, but the official marked it short, like well short, and then it was one of those deals where they didn't have a camera angle to show whether or not he truly had it, so they had to stick with the call. I thought it was a bad call, and I'm saying this as a Mississippi State guy that those are two pretty pivotal plays. And State was up, I think, 24-10 when the fourth down thing happened. So it still would have been they still would have been up no matter what. But those are kind of big plays that you look back on, and it's like, man, Mississippi State got away with it a little bit. So I can understand coming away from this game and not feeling great about where the team is at because they didn't play their best. I will also sit here and say though, you have to recognize at the end of the day, they're 4-0. Winning is the most important thing. With Tennessee coming up, if you told me this team was kind of looking ahead, I think it's possible. I didn't think that would be an issue, knowing that Northern Illinois, of all teams of a G5, is not a G5 you should overlook, given what they've done before. And also given the fact that, what you had happen to you a season ago with the Toledo loss. You shouldn't be at a point where you think you can kind of sleepwalk through a game. But they definitely didn't come out as locked in as you were hoping for. And I'm hoping that's what explains some of the general sloppiness. But look, they did play a lot better in the second half. Offensively, they were clicking better in the second half, which is the biggest thing. And if Shapen started connecting on more throws, the run game really started to get going. The blocking improved. I thought they made some adjustments with some of the calls that they were making, which helped out a lot. And they definitely pulled away. I'm not sitting here telling you that Mississippi State was going to lose this game or anything like that, but I do look back. It's there were some moments that could have gone the other way. But you get through it, and you win 38-10. You covered the point spread, and you're out beating the analytics. I thought there was a neat snippet from Bill Connolly from ESPN, who does SP Plus, that Mississippi State is one of just 8 teams in the country that has outperformed SP Plus expectations in every single game that they have played to this point. So every single game State has played, the Bill's numbers, even the one when they had State winning, did not have them winning as much as they did. And obviously, I think it had to lose into Arizona State and they get the win. They've jumped from, I think they were 66th preseason up to number 29 in SP Plus at this point. I mean, so by the ratings, they're a top 30 team nationally. Now, how much of that is inflated? Now, I was going to say how much of that is inflated by the numbers, but his numbers are opponent adjusted. You don't just get credit for beating up on bad teams. It is adjusted by the quality of your opponent. Still, you can inflate those things a little bit if you're beating up. I don't know if that's going to sustain once we get into conference play. But Mississippi State is playing a lot better than I think a lot of us expected. And even with some of the struggles in this game that you look back on, and I get why people are looking ahead like, oh, man, if they do that against Tennessee, they're in trouble. If they do that against Texas A&M, they're in trouble. I totally understand that. But they are a whole lot better than we thought. There is also something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. When State was 2-0, we said this, they're 2-0 with a very impressive win, and both games they did not play a complete game. They played about one total game's worth of good football between Southern Miss and Arizona State, and we're 2-0 with a top 15 win. And then Alcorn State really doesn't count. Northern Illinois, kind of the same thing. They played about a half's worth of really good football. If they ever fully put it together, man, this team could be really good. Now, how much of them not putting it together is just a testament of that's who the team is. And I do think there's an important point that does need to be remembered. And this is kind of my takeaway coming out of this. And I'm not at all saying this to start preparing people for the worst or sitting like it's not like, oh, reality's about to set in once they hit conference play and this team is going to start struggling and be a problem. I do think they're going to take some losses, and I don't want people to start freaking out, acting like they're a terrible team.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying this because I do think we have to sit back and remember this is year 2 of a rebuild. Really more of a year 1 because last year was a year 0. Like there is a reason, like we talked about Mississippi State's over on their win total, just 4 games in the year. It was a win total of 3.5, and they're already at a 4. Well, there's a reason the win total was 3.5. This program was in a really rough spot. This team had a whole lot of questions coming into the season. Yes, they are playing well right now. Yes, they're winning games. They're still, like, this team was not going to go from being a bad team, an awful team, to being really good in 1 year. It's pretty rare that happens. There was still going to be a little bit of a transition to be had. And you do have to remember, like, because we talk about, oh, man, they got these issues in the offensive line, and defensive line doesn't look as great. It's like, well, yeah, guys, like those are 2 of the positions that are the hardest to improve over one offseason, and they were terrible at both last year. I'm not expecting them to be dominant on the offensive and defensive lines. Like, they're going to have some issues. There's going to be moments where they get beat in coverage. There's going to be moments where they just don't execute all that well offensively. They're still a growing team. And we do have to keep that in mind that, like, one, just because it is fair to look at this team and say, like, okay, a path to go into a bowl game is 100% there, we do have to recognize they're still going to be growing. They're not going to play perfect football. 2, we also have to remember some of the good Mississippi State teams we've seen over the years are not even good, just okay Mississippi State teams had a lot of games where they didn't play all that pretty. And, like, so you can't always look at every single rough performance and be like, oh, man, this team's terrible. And I get it. People are concerned about what is this going to look like once you hit conference play. Also, some of those other teams, I think I can think of Dan Mullen teams. Mullen constantly had games against lesser competition where they found ways to win, but, buddy, they didn't look good while doing it. But at the same time, it's like you give Dan Mullen benefit of the doubt because he had proven he could be successful. We haven't fully gotten to that point with Jeff Lebby yet. I understand why it's a little different. I understand why there's some concern coming out of this game. But I do think it's worth recognizing, hey, this team's 4-0. They're winning games, and you should just be happy with what you're seeing right now overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things for Mississippi State where, like, trying to think of how I want to put this, but, like, to have a 2-10 season last year and to start the season the way that you have already, being 3-4-0, whatever it is. Is it 4-0? What are we at? 4-0, yeah. I mean, what more could you ask for? Like you said, dude, they've hit their win total pretty much. What were they at? 3.5?
3.5.
And they're at 4 wins. So if you took the under, boy, a lot of you lost a lot of money. But I'm gonna tell you what, man. You talk about a team that could possibly be on the verge of making a bowl game. They're already 4-0. They need 2 wins to go bowling. And I'm not talking about just the Egg Bowl or whatever. Like, I'm talking in the postseason, you could see them in December. And, if they win this week against Tennessee, they, as the title indicates, can they win 5 straight? We'll talk about that game a little bit more throughout the week and tonight. But, I mean, I say all that. Did anybody actually foresee this? I mean, could we have guessed that they could have got 4 wins on the year? Sure. But nobody thought we'd be talking about them being 4-0 and on a win streak like this, right?
I will say, like, there were people who predicted the Arizona State win.
Right.
Like, there were people who thought this team would find a way. Like, it's weird. There were a lot of I'd say a lot. There were some projections of 4-0. I think I actually saw some from some national media, of all people. But it was a lot of they're going to win this 4 and then they're going to lose out. And
Yeah.
maybe, God forbid, that happens because technically, I guess it's still good. But they have played a lot better to this point than anyone was expecting. Even if you were optimistic and said, you know what, I'll give Mississippi State the upset at home and they'll win the other 3 games. there's no
Mhm.
chance that you thought they were going to be as dominant as they've been to this point with the wins that they have picked up. So I don't know. Even the most optimistic, they are outperforming expectations.
No, they are, man, and you love to see that, and it's you know, I wanna say something real quick. If you're a Mississippi State fan watching this, and you look at this Tennessee game as like a must-win game, I get it. I get there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of momentum, everything's building for Jeff Levy right now. If we lose this game this week, which again we'll talk more into it, but I like you'll be 4-1. Like, you'll only have 1 loss. Is it gonna derail the season? It could, but it probably won't if Mississippi State is the team that we have seen so far, that we think they are, and honestly, I would see them as a team that's gonna take a loss or 2 this year, but bounce back the next week and keep punching, keep fighting, all that stuff. We gotta look ahead, or I have to at their schedule. I don't know necessarily who they get right after Tennessee yet, but
Texas A&M.
it's Texas A&M. Okay, so maybe there's some room for error there, but like it's the best start that they've had in a while. Like we said, they haven't hit something like this since like 2018, 2019, and it's just been remarkable to see.
4-0 for the first time since 2014. Which
Yeah,
is, that was it. No one's going to sit here and tell you this team's going to do what that 2014 team did. But
right.
yeah, it's first time in a while. And look, to the point of outperforming expectations and to the point of what is achievable the rest of the way, there was a few ratings. I talked about like SP Plus, like Mississippi State's outperformed ratings on that. And I would imagine the numbers for that would bear out pretty similar. But I know Pair ratings and Kelly Ford, their ratings, both have Mississippi State as most likely winning like 2 conference games the rest of the way, which I know, like, you look at that and it's like, well, that's not a whole lot. But one thing I've seen from a few people is like you can't look at any individual SEC game, even Florida, for as bad as they've
Mhm.
looked. It's on the road and their defense is good. Like, for all of Florida's flaws, they play good defense. State's probably going to be an underdog as it is right now. State's probably an underdog in every game the rest of the way. They're about a
Yeah,
touchdown underdog. Tennessee. They're going to be similar to underdog on the road to A&M, probably even a bigger underdog. Like, Florida will be the closest spread. They're going to be an underdog at Arkansas unless the Razorbacks continue to collapse, which is very possible. Um, they'll be a dog in a lot of these games. I see talking about Texas. The way that Arch has been playing, possibly, and it's in Starkville. So, like, we'll see.
yeah,
They'll be underdogs, but they're not going to. I think going into the year, you were expecting State in a lot of those games. It's like, man, it's going to be tough to find a couple of wins. Now you look at it and it's like, yeah, they're still underdogs, but it's more like these are going to be close games, and there's going to be
yeah.
a chance of
I'm
winning them. So the
it's
odds
like,
are you will find a couple of wins and get to that 6th number.
yeah, I mean, going into the season, you look at games like Tennessee this week, right? And I look at that game, it's a 7.5 point spread. Preseason, I don't know about you, man. I probably would have favored Tennessee by 10, 11 points, something like it seemed like it was going to be double digit.
It's
I
probably
feel that
accurate.
way about Texas, not now, but I feel like there's a lot of games, and maybe there's still one or two, like the Georgia game down the road or something, where you look at it and say, "Well, it's Georgia they're playing. Even if Georgia hasn't played their best this year, it's still like it's Kirby Smart we're talking about." Other than that, man, like if Mississippi State just continues, loses 1 or 2 games, but then builds momentum, I mean, not to look too far ahead to November, but you got games like the Egg Bowl and stuff that could go in their favor, but also from a media standpoint, they might love the Bulldogs.
It's certainly possible, and you could continue to build momentum. We're talking about finding 2 wins. It's not out of
Mhm.
the question that you get a win that sparks something more than that. But right now, I think the goal still has to be find a way to get to bowl eligibility. And despite not looking outstanding against NIU and having some iffy moments here or there, like, yes, there are fair concerns with this team despite the 4-0 record. And despite a tough SEC schedule, you still overall have to look at this team and expect they can find a way to get to a bowl game. Let's talk about the top 25 rankings here. Mississippi State comes in as the second team out. Auburn was the first in the receiving votes category, and the Mississippi State right after them. So the Bulldogs, I think, were as high as 16 in some polls, but overall not able to crack the top 25 despite a 4-0 start. Since 2010, there have only been 3 SEC teams that were 4-0 and that were not ranked. 2013, Missouri, which, hey, that team went on to go to the SEC championship game. 2021, Kentucky, they were ranked in the coaches poll, but not the AP. And then 2023, Kentucky. So the Wildcats not getting much benefit of the doubt. But those are the only examples. So if your argument is that you need to see Mississippi State against a surefire quality opponent before you rank them, I will not argue against you. I am okay with that line of thinking. The Arizona State win was good, but unfortunately, Mississippi State sort of ran into that thing where as soon as they beat them, it's like, oh, well, no Cam Scatterby, Arizona State can't win anymore. Which is unfair, especially now that ASU did just pick up a win over Baylor on the road the other night, which, by the way, there are voters who have Arizona State ahead of Mississippi State right now in their polls. ASU is not ranked, and overall ASU is behind State, but there are voters who right now have Arizona State ranked ahead of Mississippi State. And, okay, I don't know how you get to that, but good for you. But if you want to say that you have some questions about ASU and that you're not sold that that's truly a dominant win in this point, all right, like I think it's a good win. I still think it's a better win than a lot of others across college football to this point, but that's okay. Sure. And then the other 3 wins aren't going to jump off the page. I don't have an issue with someone saying I want to see Mississippi State against a surefire, great, good team before we rank them. And Mayhem's bringing up some, various things that have happened this year with teams moving in. FSU beat a terrible Bama team that won't be ranked after next week. They're top 10. I do think I'm not the Bama fan on this show, but I do think Bama's still going to end up being a good team. I know he's having a good time, but I don't really care where FSU ended up. I get it. But again, I'm not going to harp on State not being ranked. My issue is if that's the logic being used, which can be the only logic, because that's the only way you can tell me that a 4-0 team isn't ranked is, well, I don't think they've got a win that's that impressive. Why on earth is BYU ranked? BYU.
What about TCU?
I'll give TCU.
What the hell's TCU? Yeah,
I'll get TCU, but I think BYU is worse. BYU is far more inexcusable. BYU is 3-0. Their wins are Portland State, Stanford, and at East Carolina.
Portland they gave up 13 points.
Portland State, that means nothing. Stanford is god-awful. Stanford is one of the worst power conference teams in the country. Stanford has a coach who doesn't want to be there. Like an NFL guy who was just like, all right, well, my old quarterback needs someone to coach this program for a year because the other coach we had hired had to get kicked off the team for being a jerk to all the student trainers and women on the staff. So he's gone. So I guess I'll go coach to help my old guy out for a second here. They're one of the worst teams in the country. So beating Stanford doesn't mean jack crap. And at East Carolina, cool. Is that a better win than at Southern Miss? I mean, I know Southern just lost to La Tech. That doesn't look great for them. But, there is no world where you can justify BYU having a better resume to this point than Mississippi State. Now, if you want to say that BYU, you think for whatever reason, that they're a stronger team from a power rating standpoint, if you're giving them credit for being a 10-win team or 11-win team last season, whatever. Mississippi State is undefeated and has a win that is far better than anything BYU has put on the record to this point. So don't sit here and tell me BYU should be ranked. And again, it's not Mississippi State. If you want to say Auburn should still be in that spot, I actually don't care. Auburn, okay, the one loss was tough on the road to Oklahoma. Some controversy there. I'm okay. If you still had Auburn in your top 25, I wouldn't be mad at you. BYU makes no sense. That one is so stupid. TCU. Now, the justification for TCU is, well, they have 2 wins over power conference teams. They beat a pair of ACC teams. Those 2 teams are Bill Belichick's North Carolina, which is a joke of a football team, the least serious football program in the country right now. They're more focused on what Belichick's girlfriend is doing than that team itself. That team is awful. Now, I know everybody and their mother was watching that game because that's Monday night, and it was like, oh, what's Belichick and UNC going to look like? They're going to look like they're going to get their teeth kicked in because they're terrible. They just lost to Scott Frost UCF. I don't care about TCU beating UNC. That means nothing. Their other win, SMU. All right, that feels like a good win. SMU is a preseason ranked team. SMU has lost twice now. This is now a 2-loss SMU team, which, by the way, if we're going to apply transitive property, SMU lost to Baylor, who lost to Arizona State, who lost to Mississippi State. Mississippi State's best win over Arizona State is better than TCU's best win over Stanford. I know transitive property doesn't always work in college football.
And by the way,
play out that way perfectly, but still, I'm using it because it fits my argument right now. The SMU win isn't that special either. I'm sorry. Let me finish here real quick.
Okay.
And then the other win was like Tarleton State it was Abilene Christian. Big whoop. Don't tell me, well, they've beat 2 power conference teams when one of those teams is the Fighting Jordan Hudsons. That means absolutely nothing. So TCU, don't tell me that they are more deserving of a top 25 ranking either. Illinois does not need to be ranked anymore at this point after getting their teeth kicked in. Their win over Duke isn't even all that impressive at this point. Indiana proved that they're big, massive freaking frauds. I do think Notre Dame is still going to be really good, but they have 2 losses, and I know they were close, and I know they were good teams, but they still were 0-2, and they just gave up 30 points to freaking Purdue. I don't care that they gave up 30 points to Purdue. Maybe Notre Dame's actually not that good of a football team. Like, have we considered that? So giving them benefit of the doubt is crazy. Again, if you don't want to rank Mississippi State, fine. All of those teams, that is insane right now. That you can easily say, well, they're clearly better than Mississippi State. Maybe not. All right, go ahead. What'd you have to say?
I don't even remember. Something about SMU, man. I mean, they lost to TCU. They lost to Baylor. They lost to the Big 12. Okay, cool. Those aren't bad teams. Those aren't bad losses necessarily. I don't even remember, man. I got so off track.
Yeah, that's me. I had to. It's
like. Look, no, I got you, man. I mean, Mississippi State. I'm not asking for them to be top 10. I'm not even asking to be top 15. You can put them at 25 for all I freaking care. I don't. But they got to be up there, man. Like if they beat Tennessee this week, who I believe is still ranked at like 15.
They are.
If they get that win and they're still not ranked, our system is broken. They have 102. They have 102 votes in the AP, just only behind Auburn. They're close, but what has BYU done? And honestly, TCU, do they really have much of a strong resume? I mean,
no, not really. Like they don't. And look again, it's the state ranking not being ranked is not my issue. It's the teams that are above them. If you're going to sit here and tell me Mississippi State shouldn't be ranked, and like you talk about the Tennessee game, if they beat Tennessee, they'll be on every single ballot. I don't think there will be anybody that does not have them in if they beat the Vols. And I know I've said all this, and Mississippi State is by the odds most likely going to lose this game, and people are going to be like, "Oh, you were doing all this whining about State not being ranked, and look what happened." It's like, I don't know, man. Maybe I want to be ranked because they're probably not going to get a ton of opportunity the rest of the way once they get into conference play. But like, it just the justification does not make a whole lot of sense. But whatever. Nonetheless, the AP poll is stupid. The coaches poll is stupid. The coaches poll is literally voted upon by like the SIDs and student assistants within the football program. Because the coaches, you think they're actually paying attention to the teams across the country outside of their own and whoever they're playing next. No, they're not. And then the AP is incredibly broken system because it's mostly made up of beat writers who spend their entire Saturday covering one team and putting all their focus and attention into one team and don't get to watch as much college football as you need to if you're going to try to somehow rank the top 25 teams in the country, which is already a process that's kind of impossible to do accurately. But then we make it up the rankings of people who don't get the chance to actually sit down and watch everything. And then you have some of them who straight up tell you, like, yeah, this doesn't really matter when they get something wrong. Mm-hmm. That's the AP poll. But nonetheless, Mississippi State is unranked. They'll have to beat the Vols to get that respect. Taking a look to the future, and we're already well into this show, far further. We're 30 minutes in, and all we did was talk a little bit about recapping and where this team's at, and then I ranted about the top 25 poll. This shows we might not go deep into Tennessee, which I should go ahead and say. I don't know why I didn't say it off the top. You guys are going to get a special edition of Mississippi State Live tomorrow night at the same time, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern, when we are going to be joined by our friends over at Tennessee Live in the Voice of College Football Network. And we're going to be talking about the matchup. So we're going to get perspective from Tennessee guys on the Vols and get a nice little dive into the matchup from both perspectives. So we'll have plenty of talk about State versus Tennessee, and we're still going to talk about it here on the episode tonight. But yeah, bonus episode for you guys this week, fully diving into the matchup between Mississippi State and Tennessee. Looking ahead to the future, though, and some matchups that'll be back on the schedule. Tuesday night, the SEC is going to officially release the permanent opponents for each SEC team. We talked about this a few weeks back. The SEC did vote to move to a 9-game conference schedule. Each team will have 3 permanent opponents that they will play on an annual basis, based mostly on history, rivalries, and also competitive balance, which is a big part of things. And those will be reevaluated on a 4-year basis. So, whoever you get this round 1, you're going to have them for 4 years, and then we'll go from there to see if we have to make any adjustments moving forward. Those have already been leaked. Chris Lowe, formerly of ESPN, now of Avon 3, he got the scoop, and he put everything out a day early. I guess we'll see if it somehow blows up in his face and it's wrong tomorrow. But as of right now, Mississippi State, we do know their 3 permanent opponents will be Ole Miss, which everybody knew that, Alabama, which is a game that there was a lot of discussion about really over the years, whether or not State Alabama would be a permanent game because of some of the different factions at play there. And then interestingly enough, Vanderbilt, Team State does not have a whole lot of history with, but I'm not complaining one bit about that. A little bit of a weird one. So this is what I'll say. Mississippi State was always going to be in an interesting situation with this because ultimately there is one game State has to play within the SEC, and that's the Egg Bowl. There is not another rivalry. And yeah, Mayhem brings only over a 4-year period. So this is not going to be the case. This may be the case beyond 4 years. If it all goes to plan and it looks well, well, maybe they'll stick with it, but it could change. The Egg Bowl is the only game Mississippi State has to play. There is not a secondary SEC rivalry that either Mississippi State or an opponent views as like, oh, that's a game we have to have. There's a ton of history with the likes of Alabama, LSU, Auburn. Mississippi State is actually the most played opponent for all 3 of those teams. The LSU one is always weird to me. I would have assumed Ole Miss. The Auburn-Alabama one, that's a little bit of like, everyone would assume it's those teams would be each other's most played, but there was a long stretch where the Iron Bowl did not get played because of nastiness within the rivalry. So State and Auburn played Mississippi State a bunch. So State's the most played opponent for those 3 teams, a ton of games over the years. So there's a lot of history with Mississippi State mostly being on the losing end, but it's still a lot of games been played historically. But none of those are true rivalries. There have been moments. I think if you look on Mississippi State's Wikipedia, it talks about LSU State and Bama State as being rivalry games. Mississippi State fans do not consider those rivalries, and the other side of those games do not consider them rivalries either. It's just, other than being a regional conference rival, it's just those are games that have been played historically. That said, so with that in mind, if the only game you have to get played is the Egg Bowl, that meant that we're going to open the door for other weird games to potentially get added in. If everybody has to get 3 permanent opponents, State was probably going to end up with somebody else, which I think is where the Vanderbilt things comes in. I don't think anybody really saw that happening. That's very random. You do get Alabama. So the Alabama of it all, what I'll say is I fully understand why it happened. Like, I'm not oblivious to it. One, the chance of Mississippi State getting 3 games against 3 kind of like a totally favorable draw across the board, it was pretty low. It's a competitive balance thing. Bama made it very clear from day one when this first brought up a few years back when Saban was still the coach that it was not going to be fair to them if they had to play LSU, Auburn, and Tennessee on an annual basis. And officially, the LSU game is on the chopping block. They will not be playing the Tigers annually. They'll still have Auburn, obviously, and they'll still have Tennessee each year. But LSU is going to become an every other year matchup going forward, at least for the time being. Bama wanted a game that would level things out because obviously Auburn and Tennessee, two teams that are national title contenders at their best, having three such games if you had at LSU would be much tougher than what most everybody else in the SEC has to deal with. So they looked for competitive balance. And when you add in the fact that Bama and Mississippi State have such a long history of playing each other and the proximity, it was going to happen. Do I love it? No, because I've had to sit through so many beatings at the hand of the Crimson Tide for so long that I have no interest in seeing that game continue. Literally, while Mississippi State has beaten Alabama in my lifetime, I have not seen Mississippi State beat Alabama since being a State fan. The last win was 2007. I was not paying attention to college football in 2007. So I have no interest in seeing that series continue, but I fully understand that it was going to happen. It was just going to be tough for it to not take place. What I will say for that series, and I'm not saying this is a shot just because we have the Bama guy here in Christian, Bama post Saban is not going to be Bama as it was under Saban. And I say that as someone who actually likes Kalen DeBoer and thinks that if he's given a fair shot, he can have success. Like, I don't think Bama's about to fall off the face of the earth. But Bama's probably about to look more like a typical top-end team in college football. And top-end teams sometimes still lose games to lesser opponents in games that they're not supposed to. Bama was sort of a very unique situation under Saban where that pretty much didn't happen. Like, even when they did take a random weird loss, it ended up being usually to a pretty good team most of the time. So it's going to, like, you're not talking about the same dominant Alabama moving forward. The Vanderbilt over of it all more than makes up for any concern, I will say. And I understand right now Vanderbilt looks good and fun, and they're winning games. They're a genuinely good team. I understand all of that. Historically, like, Mississippi State's one of those programs historically in the SEC. There's not been another team you could look at and say if we play them on an annual basis, we should win most of those games. Vanderbilt is the one. Vanderbilt is the one team in the conference that Mississippi State operating at a normal level, even if Vanderbilt is having some success, State should be able to win that game. And again, maybe Clark Lee has something rolling here. We'll see what they are once Diego Pavia stops playing college football 20 years from now. But like right now, Vanderbilt's in a good spot. I don't know if that's going to continue forever and ever. And maybe Mississippi State falls into the abyss, but I like what Levy's doing right here in this moment. So to get Vanderbilt on the schedule, like, I think mathematically, I think Mississippi State was projected a lot. It was going to be Ole Miss, Kentucky, Texas A&M was kind of one that would get drawn up a lot, or maybe Ole Miss, Kentucky, Alabama. By getting Vanderbilt instead of a Kentucky, instead of a Texas A&M, your odds of getting a win out of that trio on an annual basis is significantly higher. So even with getting Alabama on the schedule every year, I think this draw works out well for Mississippi State.
Yeah, and to kind of put it in Alabama's perspective, just being a fan, growing up, watching the Tide and everything, I mean, I like that this game is going to come back for a little bit. Maybe this is going to only last for a year or so, but still, it is going to be odd. I get keeping Auburn and Tennessee, your two biggest rivals, as Alabama. LSU is still a big one too. This is a series that goes back a long time. I don't know exactly, but Alabama, I mean, 57 wins, 27 losses. There's 5 ties. I want to say it's got to be one of the older rivalries between two SEC teams. Now, it's probably not as old as Auburn, Georgia, or Auburn, Alabama, or anything weird like that, but it's kind of honestly going to suck to not have LSU, but I was still pretty upset when they took away the Mississippi schools because even with Ole Miss, uh, you know, take Mississippi State out of it just for a minute. Ole Miss, even, I mean, Alabama would play annually, and they had some competitive games, and Ole Miss was able to even pull some upsets every now and then. But I don't know, man. It is what it is. I'm happy they didn't screw with the big rivalries when they considered all this. Like for Mississippi State, getting back to them, you got Ole Miss. That's fine. That's great. That's the Egg Bowl. You want to keep that. I don't know, man. I just to kind of reiterate your thoughts, like was there another opponent that you said they can't mess with other than Ole Miss, or did they just kind of just keep the Egg Bowl and leave it at that.
Yeah, State was ultimately going to be a filler team for somebody.
Right.
Now, like I will say, like Kentucky, I think a lot of people piece them together because Kentucky also does not. Kentucky can. I've said Kentucky like 5 times. They consider Tennessee their big SEC rival, and I think they did
Right.
get them on like as an annual. Tennessee doesn't really
They
care about.
got Yeah, Kentucky got Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina. I'm actually surprised that they don't consider Florida their biggest rival because they've played a crap ton. Like really, but
I think they care about the Florida series, but that was like Florida won that series like 32 games in a row at one point.
yeah, yeah.
It was just a few
Like
years ago
dating
that
back to like yeah.
it was just a few years ago Kentucky found some success. Tennessee was a series Kentucky fans had always cared about. Tennessee fans didn't really care all that much about it, but there was a stretch
Right.
they used to play to close the season. So like they wanted that game, but ultimately like Kentucky does not have a single SEC opponent that views them as like a big deal. And I'm not saying this to dunk on
Hmm.
Kentucky. It's just reality. Kentucky's big rival is Louisville, so it's in the non-conference. Um, but Mississippi State and Kentucky had played every single year going back to the late '80s. Had been a very competitive series. Had a lot of fun games over the years. I think it made a lot of sense to put those two teams together. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't. But even then, like a lot of people talked about, well, maybe Mississippi State, Texas A&M, because like A&M kind of doesn't have a ton of natural rivals within the SEC outside of Texas. Like they've sort of made A&M LSU a thing. A&M Arkansas was kind of an old Southwest thing, but like A&M Oklahoma was never really a thing. Like even though they were in the Big 12 together, they don't really care about each other. And you see A&M ends
Right.
up with Missouri, which yeah, they joined the conference together and were Big 12 teams. A&M and Missouri do not care about each other. Like there's not a lot of history there. So people talked about maybe A&M Mississippi State just because it was like, hey, the two maroon and white ag schools uh, that that like it, both were coached by Jackie Sherrill, both were coached by Emory Ballard. So they both have dog mascots. Mississippi State was once Mississippi A&M and was once the Aggies. So there's a lot of parallels between the two schools. Both have traditions that other fan bases think are annoying. So there's a lot of parallel between State and A&M. So it made some sense. But obviously that's not a rivalry. Like we don't really care about each other. So State was going to get somebody, and they ultimately ended up with Vanderbilt. Going back to your point with the LSU game for Bama, I am surprised that was not like a TV network thing of, hey, like ESPN and ABC saying, like, y'all understand that game gets insane ratings every single time we play it, right?
Right.
So, like, it needs to be on the schedule every single year. I guess the counter argument is because in recent years, Bama's had, I said LSU won just a few years ago, but the series
Yeah.
has been more lopsided in Bama's favor, and the Georgia game has probably become a little bit bigger, even not being an annual game. I could see this being a deal where what they look at it is saying that no, we're not going to get Bama LSU every year, but every year we will either get Alabama Georgia or Alabama LSU. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they'd fix the schedule so that they have that game, those games rotating for Alabama, so that they're always guaranteed to get the one big draw. I will say
Mhm.
this in terms of State and Bama playing each other. There is part of me that does appreciate the as much as I don't care about that series because I've had to sit with Mississippi State losing, and I'm always going to come at it from the perspective of what's going to help Mississippi State from a wins loss standpoint. There is real history between the two teams, and I do think there is something to be said of playing the teams that you have a history with and have the regionality with. And like I'll be completely honest, man. Like give me like I like the SEC West. I understand why divisions were a problem because you didn't get to see the other teams in your conference enough. But I don't know, man. Playing playing the games against Bama, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas every single year, like along with the Egg Bowl. There was something to be said about having those games on the schedule that you knew you were always going to play. That I do miss a little bit. So getting Bama on the schedule does bring back some of that, just a touch. And having that regular opponent on the slate does matter a little bit. We'll
Mhm.
see how that series looks like in the future. Let's talk
For
about
sure.
Tennessee. Oh, do you have something?
I was just saying for sure, man. Like I agree with what you had to say about all that because it's just it. I don't know, man. Like keep the in-state teams, keep the traditional stuff. as for Mississippi State, give them the Egg Bowl, and I'm sure everyone's happy, right? Basically.
Overall, well, okay, we're happy because we got Vanderbilt. Ultimately, like we're
Okay.
okay with it because
Okay.
of Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other team within the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Volunteers, number 15 in the country, undefeated. Sorry, not undefeated. They are 3-1. The one loss coming at home in overtime to Georgia. They had a field goal attempt to win the game in regulation. That attempt misses, and they take the loss in overtime in a crazy fun game a couple weeks ago. Tennessee to this point probably look a little bit better than a lot of us were expecting. I know the Vols still had fairly high expectations, but offensively, so much new for this team compared to where they were last year that there was just a lot of questions. For as much issue as Nico Iamaleava gave them, was Joey Aguilar truly going to be better? Were they going to have receivers step up? How is the offensive line going to play? How are they going to replace, at running back, Dylan Sampson, and losing a player of his caliber? And talking about the Tennessee offense here to start, they look as good as they have looked ever to this point under Josh Heupel. And dare I say, this might be the best version of the Tennessee offense we've seen. And I am basing that off the fact that they were able to put 41 points on the board against Georgia. And I will always use Georgia as the measuring stick for Tennessee. In 2022, that awesome Tennessee team, they scored 13 in Athens and were not able to do anything against Georgia for that, that great Tennessee team offensively with Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, all those guys. This Tennessee team was able to score on Georgia, which I know it's not as good of a Georgia team as that 22 team was, but still, that counts for something. And the fact that it's not just lighting up weak opponents in the non-con like it was a season ago, this offense is cooking. And a lot of it is quarterback play. Joey Aguilar has been fantastic to this point. On the season, he is completing about 67% of his passes for 281 yards a game, 9.6 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns to just 3 picks. He also has a rushing touchdown. He's not been a huge runner for them to this point, but he can use his legs. He has been very impressive. The transfer from UCLA by way of App State just has really stood out, and he's executing this offense at a high level, gets the ball out quick, does a great job, hitting his receivers downfield and at least giving his guys a chance to catch the football downfield, which was an issue for Nico. He looks more decisive. He's been better with the deep ball, and they're operating the system at a higher level. I will also say he's being helped out in a lot of ways around him, both from a personnel standpoint, but also from what Josh Heupel's doing. From a personnel standpoint, receivers have stepped up. They are better at receiver this year than they were a season ago. Chris Brazzell, last year was kind of a mediocre year for him. He finished the season last year with 29 catches for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns. This year, he already has 25 catches for 426 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he's already greatly surpassed his numbers from a year ago. And I know it's easy to say, well, it's the quarterback, and quarterback is part of it for sure. But Brazzell never really stood out last year. He's a big-time playmaker for them this year. Brandon Staley and Mike Matthews, the 2 young guys, both of them getting involved and putting up big numbers. Miles Kitselman has been very impressive for them at tight end. They've got weapons in the receiving core, and I understand, Kitselman was a starter for them a season ago, but they're getting him involved more. And I understand some of this is quarterback, but also I just think guys have gotten better, and it's also how they're being utilized. If you watch Tennessee this year, they don't just go wide splits every single play. They don't just throw deep shots every single play. You see more formations. You see more crossing routes. You see more just a different variety of passing concepts. You see receivers running real routes, which is the thing Tennessee has not always done. It is a different Tennessee Volunteer offense this year under Josh Heupel. They have really reinvented themselves to become a much more multiple type of offensive attack, and that makes them more difficult to defend. I think that's a big reason why they were able to put points on the board in the way they were against Georgia, is Georgia had gotten so used to looking at Tennessee and was like, you guys run 5 plays, and we'll just cover your 5 plays and we'll be good. They don't do that anymore, and it makes them more difficult to deal with. The run game has not missed a beat without Dylan Sampson. Star Thomas, the Duke transfer, 272 yards at about 6.5 a carry with 4 touchdowns. Deshaun Bishop 3 touchdowns on 6.9 yards per carry, 263 yards. Peyton Lewis, 3 scores, has been good for them to this point, 157 yards and 4.9 a carry. So it's sort of a 3-headed monster at running back that has been very effective. Guys who have made plays, watching them, if there was a thing I look at with Tennessee that's a little bit of a concern, their O-line has not, from them, their O-line has not been overly impressive. They're not giving up sacks because Aguilar does a great job getting the ball out. Like, it's very quick. He's very decisive. The ball's out. But they do get pushed around a little bit. The run blocking is not always there. Those running backs, those are guys who can make plays, though. Those are guys who can sort of make things happen even when everything's not there. This is a dangerous Tennessee offense. And as much as we talked about Arizona State being a big test for the Bulldog defense, this is an even bigger test for Mississippi State defensively this weekend.
No doubt, man, and credit to the Vols. What's interesting, you mentioned some of their running backs. I feel like the run game, uh, outside of maybe Braylon Staley with 281 receiving and Chris Brazel with 426. And I know this is a team that has been heavy on quarterback and getting the ball out, taking the deep shots, but they've really leaned a lot on the run game this year. Star Thomas, watch him, uh, you know, 42 carries, 272 averages, 6.5, longest play of 27, already 4 rushing touchdowns. But what's scary to me, um, if you're Mississippi State, you have to prepare for 2, if not maybe 3 different running backs because I feel like Tennessee just loves to rotate those bodies. Deshaun Bishop, 38 carries, 263 on the ground, averaging about 6.9, counted 7 uh, on a carry. And as long as play is 50, he's already got 3 rushing touchdowns. Peyton Lewis, not as much for him, but he has 3 rushing touchdowns. Basically, the run game is going to be difficult to stop for Mississippi State's defense, although I like what I've seen so far from that side of the defense for the Bulldogs. But this is not a pushover run game that Tennessee is going to put on the field Saturday.
No, and I will, like, for me, that's a little bit of a concern because Arizona State in the second half, man, they were able to really lean on their run game against Mississippi State. And
Yeah.
Northern Illinois over the weekend was able to have some success running the football. The state's going to have to contend with that, and that'll be difficult to deal with a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what scares me most, though, is a passing attack with multiple dynamic playmakers on the field. Um, you know, Arizona State was very much Jordan Tyson is the guy, and he is awesome, but he's one guy. And Southern Miss, I think they have some okay receivers, but it's Southern Miss. NIU, they had one guy who made some plays, but overall their playmakers don't really jump off the page. Tennessee's got 3 guys plus a tight end, so it's really 4 who are like legit threats in the receiving core. And man, that is tough to contend with. And look, State's corners have performed really well to this point. Kelly Jones is one of the highest graded corners in the country. Same goes for Diego Brumfield. You have Jet Jefferson back. He was able to play last week. Javen Williams has also graded out well. So State's corners have been a whole lot better than State fans were expecting them to be coming into the year. They are going to have to be at their best in this game. But State safeties as well, because it's not just about defending the guys on the outside. It's defending the slot receivers as well, and that's where State's safeties come into this. And, Isaac Smith is going to have to be on his game. They're going to need Brian Lanier on his game, Hunter Washington. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Jerron Manning because he got hurt against NIU, and Jeff Levy did not provide an update today. Basically, the way Levy sort of handles things when it comes to injuries is non-conference. He'll kind of give you an idea of what a guy's dealing with. Once conference play hits, you can wait till the injury report comes out before you find out the deal because Jeff Levy's not going to tell you. So we'll know Wednesday night when the first injury report gets released kind of what it's looking like for Jerron Manning, but that'd be significant. Like, they need him to be able to go. He's supposed to be one of their better guys there on the back end at safety. So it's going to be tough for them to deal with those receivers. That's going to be the big thing. How is State able to handle an offense that is so multi-dimensional and has so many real threats to deal with? This is going to be a big test for the Bulldog defense.
No doubt, man. I mean, you mentioned some of the guys on defense. It's going to be a challenge, but at least we have the really good numbers going into going into this game. I mean, I thought I had it pulled up here. Let me look. But I thought I just saw, did we not have like 4 guys with an interception already? I mean, something like that. No, we got 5. We got Brian Lanier at safety, Javen Williams, Hunter Washington, and Diego Brumfield. It all comes in the secondary. Isaac Smith also there, but it, these are, and Javen Williams has hit pretty hard for some fumbles. There's a lot of physicality and toughness on the back end of the defense in the secondary. I want to see it for the guys up front. We've seen it so far this season too, but I feel like there's been a lot of emphasis on stopping the pass, which I think is needed for this Mississippi State defense.
They have definitely played more defend the pass first, but look, I'll say second half against Arizona State, they were trying to stop the run, and ASU was having success. Northern Illinois, I think they were trying to stop the run, and IU was not having a ton of success, but was able to hit a few nice runs and move the chain and have put together a few good drives. They're going to need the defensive front and the safeties. Those are the groups I'm looking at in this game. Need to have big performances. You got to create some disruption, because I will say this, and I kind of talked about it. Tennessee offensive line is still kind of a spot I look at. On the year, 2 sacks allowed. I think it's only 11 tackles for loss allowed. Those are really good numbers to this point. But if you watch it, it's Joey Aguilar gets the ball out quick. Like he does not sit back in the pocket, wait around the way Nico did. That ball's out.
Yeah.
2, the 3 running backs, those guys have made some plays when they haven't always been there. They do a good job of getting downhill. They do a good job of finding space. So I think there's opportunities to be had if your defensive line can create some disruption to kind of get in the backfield and mess things up a little bit. But they do a good job of handling that. So State's definitely going to have to step up to be able to limit the run game as much as possible. But yeah, on the back end, you've got to cover as well. Looking at Tennessee defensively, not as dominant to this point as I think a lot of people were expecting. There were really high expectations for this Tennessee defense this year. After such a great group a season ago, where last year only gave up 16 points a game, were really dominant on that side of the ball. They lost a lot of guys from that group, but they still brought back quite a bit of experience. Now, I know they've been playing without their starting corners throughout the season, and it has shown a little bit. They're giving up close to 28 points a game. Syracuse scored 26 on them. Georgia scored 44. Now, and UAB last week put up 24. Now, most of those points from UAB were second half. But last year, Tennessee didn't have games like that. Against these greatly outmatched opponents, it didn't matter that they were up big. They still shut down those teams when they played them. So it is a little bit of a sign of a defense that's not as deep, not as talented. And I talk about the pass defense especially. Right now, they are giving up 279 passing yards a game. They are allowing teams to complete 67% of their passes for over 7 yards attempt. They've given up 6 touchdowns and have only picked off 3 passes. They've not been good against the pass. And looking at it from like a game-by-game perspective, and I know there's only a couple games that matter here, but Syracuse, 274 yards through the air. Not a super efficient day, but still we're able to find some success. 304 yards for Georgia. UAB, a lot of it was second half, but UAB was throwing the ball some in the first half too. They finished with 371 yards. And I know you look at yards per attempt, but 7.1 for UAB, 9.5 for Georgia, 6.9 for Syracuse is not very good. It was mostly, underneath stuff. Tennessee's a team you can throw it against a little bit. And I think if you're Mississippi State, with what you've seen to this point from your passing game, you try to see if you can take advantage of that. Against the run, they've been really good. 93 rushing yards allowed per game. But it is, I will say, like Syracuse, 103 yards rushing, but it was only 2.3 a carry. They really limited the Syracuse run game a lot. Shut down East Tennessee, shut down UAB. Georgia ran for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, 3.6 a carry. Georgia was not gashing them on the ground. They were able to limit it a little bit. But you can run on them a little bit. Georgia was able to run some too. This is a gettable Tennessee defense. Now, I don't want to sit here and tell you that this defense doesn't still have guys that you have to worry about. Their defensive front can create a lot of problems. Joshua Joseph's off the edge, 3 sacks for him on the season, 4 tackles for loss. Jalen McMurray, well, that's a DB, but I'm sorry, I don't know all their players, but 1.5 sacks from Nathan Robinson and Caleb Herring. From a tackle for loss standpoint, 3.5 for Caleb Herring. Boo Carter, the nickel to back, has gotten involved with 3.5 tackles for loss, as well as Jalen McMurray with 3. Arion Carter's a really good linebacker. He has 2 in the season. 3 different players in the interception to this point. I'm curious how many guys you have that have had passes broken up. Colton Hood, I forget. Yeah, that guy's been really good for them. Colton has had to step in as a starter at corner, and he has done his job to this point, playing really well, holding down his side of the field. But they're not as dominant as we thought they would be coming in. They got guys who are playmakers that can make some big plays, that can create negative plays. I think to this point of the season, they have 30 tackles for loss already through 4 games. And as a team, they have 15 sacks. So they're averaging close to 4 sacks a game. They create negative plays, but they also give up yards. They've given up some points. Mm-hmm. And I look at Georgia. Georgia was able to get some plays both down the field, but also sideline to sideline. The perimeter, like Georgia threw a bunch of little quick screens that turned into like 10, 15-yard gains, and Tennessee just couldn't stop it. Georgia did some stuff getting around the edge in the run game, picking up good gains. I look at, a guy like Anthony Evans from Mississippi State, and I feel like he could kind of have a game like Zach Branch had a couple weeks ago for Georgia. Like, he's not that level of player, but he's a similar type guy. I think State's going to have a way to move the ball some on Tennessee. Like, State's offensive line has got to step up because Tennessee's defensive front can give them some problems. But I think State can find a way to put some points on the board in this game.
I think so too, but like you said, man, the O-line has to step up, and I think that's our key. If you give Shapen time to throw, he can make the throws. I'm not really buying so much of Tennessee's secondary as much as their defensive front. It is interesting to see that they can get after the quarterback. I counted 6 guys that have at least 1 sack. There's some tag teaming going on with guys like Jordan Ross or Marion Dye with half a sack so far this year. The leader in sacks is Joshua Joseph at 3. They have bodies. The problem for Tennessee, though, is they don't have a set starting lineup. Not that they don't have a starting lineup, but there's not a set like, hey, we got these 2 guys that tag team and they go back and forth. It's Joshua Josephs who leads in sacks at 3, and then everyone else is like hitting 1.5 sacks. So, I mean, do you think that creates an advantage possibly for the quarterback play in Blake Shapen this week?
You mean just the number of guys that they have that can create problems?
Well, like, they have multiple guys that can create problems, but it's, I feel like Tennessee's that team that just rotates all the bodies. And so they just kind of
They do
does
some,
that.
they did it more last year. Because like last year,
Right.
they legit had like a 2 deep that they could just roll out there. I don't know that they have that depth this year. But like, it's also some of like who they've played to this point. They've had 3 games where they've been able to play a lot of guys, kind of similar to Mississippi State. Like State rotates bodies a lot to this point because outside of Arizona State, they've been able to. And I think the same could probably be said for Tennessee. I think it's mostly going to be their top guys, but it's a defense. I think you have a chance if you can avoid giving up the disastrous plays. And look, Tennessee hasn't forced just a ton of turnovers to this point. I'm curious what their havoc rate would be. At this point of the season of negative plays created so far. That could be something we look at as we get later into the week more for this matchup. But I think if you can avoid the big time negative plays, like you have a chance to move the ball on Tennessee. You got to be careful with the football, but I think you have a chance to have some success here. So it's not the defense we thought we were going to see. Now, if we come into this game and, Giovanni McCoy at corner is going to be back when he's one of the top players in the country, he hasn't played this season. That would be tough to deal with. But even if he does come back, hey, it would be game 1. And I don't know what his status is going to be coming into this. I don't know if Heupel has given any kind of an update. I'm sure we'll get he should be on the injury report to find out for sure what that's going to look like in a couple of days. But, it's so funny. Coming into the year, I talked about this game, and I thought if State was going to have a chance. Because I was not buying into the Tennessee offense, but I thought their defense would be really, really good. I thought State would kind of have to win a slugfest at home. You're going to have to score some points against Tennessee, but you might have to kind of win a rock fight. I think you're probably looking at probably having to win a shootout now, which
Yeah.
frankly is more in when you say Jeff Lebby versus Josh Heupel, you envision shootout. So I think this could be a fun game in Starkville with a lot of points on the board.
It could be. I mean, the like I said, man, that spread favors Tennessee, but only by, I mean, just over a touchdown. I mean, we're looking at 7.5 right now, and the line actually dropped. It was at 9.5 the other night, but I think it's got to be an offensive game. I mean, I think systematically you probably favor Tennessee there, but at the same time, like we talked about, it's not the 2022 or 2023. Now, granted, it might be a little bit better than last year, like talent wise and just how they're playing right now. I think. I mean, obviously, we saw what they did to Georgia, even though they lost that game. But I mean, I think the big question for this game, for overall for Mississippi State, as you kind of pointed out a little bit, you're at home, but can you hang with Tennessee if they're putting up like 24, 28? Well, shoot, if they get more than 4 touchdowns, you hope that in the 30s, Mississippi State can hang around. And honestly, so far this season, I've seen that their offense can, but I think for this game, there's two sides of it, Andrew, is that I don't think they faced a defense like what they're going to see Saturday, but I also don't think that the defense for State has faced an offense like what they're going to see.
They've definitely not faced an offense. Arizona State defensively, I'm curious to this point. I think they did pretty good against Baylor, and we know that Baylor offense is really good. Um, Arizona State, they're giving up 20 and a half points a game. They gave up 24 to Baylor, obviously
Hmm.
24 to Mississippi State, um, 15 to Texas State, which Texas State G5, but it's a good offense. Look defensively, how many yards did Baylor have? They held Baylor to 357 yards. I mean, Arizona State, I will say,
Dang.
their defense has been pretty good to this point.
Yeah,
And they're not quite as disruptive as Tennessee is, but they've got some guys who have made a lot of plays as well. So I think State has seen a defense of similar quality, to be completely honest with you. And ASU's got some NFL guys in that defense. They've seen a defense like
for
that. But that
sure.
was a game, to be fair, State played one good half. Second half, they didn't play all that well. Like, you're going to need a complete half against Tennessee because, to the other point, offensively, yeah, Tennessee's offense, this is going to be the biggest test State's defense has seen this year. This might be the best offense they end up facing this season, to be frank. Maybe I'm overblowing things a little bit here, but I've been really impressed with what I've seen from the Volunteer offense to this point. It's going to be a big test, and State's going to have to put some points on the board if they're going to have a chance here. We'll get more into predictions later in the week since we got more episodes to come. We'll actually give our predictions later on. But just from an overall, like, what is your thoughts going into this game for Mississippi State in terms of their? I know we've talked a little bit on their chances, but I mean, we know this is the biggest game in Starkville in many, many years. Like, there's a good chance. There's under 1,000 tickets remaining. The good chance this ends up being a sellout. I don't know if the
Hmm.
actual butts and seats will reflect that, but I think it's going to be pretty close. They're going to have a big crowd on hand in Starkville. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere, pretty similar to what you saw against Arizona State, if not even more so, in terms of the juice that you're going to be hearing from the student section in the stadium. State's definitely going to have to ride that wave of emotion to be able to have a chance here. But from a on the field standpoint, I mean, where do you look at State being able to match up with the Vols?
I think you got to trust the home crowd advantage. I just have to think that I think that's part of it where they can match up with the Vols. Is just the crowd. I think getting used to the home crowd environment. I think that uh trying to think. I mean, what's interesting here? I'm looking at the rushing yards when I look at this game. The lead running back, Thomas for Tennessee is only up by 1 yard over Fluff Bothwell. Dude, that it's 272 to 271 in favor of Thomas for Tennessee. It's pretty hard to get that in a SEC matchup, but I mean, you can kind of see where they have similar offenses and stuff. when in doubt in a game like this, like I am not going into this game heavy on Mississippi State, but at the same time, I'm not heavy on Tennessee either. When in doubt, Andrew, my rule is take the home team, especially in the SEC, because you help the home crowd environment helps you out a little bit. But overall, I mean, I do like State's chances in this game. I also like Tennessee's chances. We'll just have to wait and see. And like you said, we'll do predictions later.
You talk about home crowd, and there is a point to be had. One, Tennessee's not on the road yet this season.
Hmm.
Two, Josh Heupel for his tenure, they have not been great on the road. Last season, even in their wins, they were not as impressive playing away from Knoxville. And I know that's kind of obvious, but the very best teams go on the road and still are dominant. We didn't see that from Tennessee last year. We didn't see it from Tennessee 2 seasons ago. Even the 2022 team, for as good as they were, at Pittsburgh was a shootout. That was a back and it wasn't really a full shootout, but that was a back and forth game. I mean, that team at LSU, they put it on the Tigers. I can't really say anything there, but at Georgia, did not play well there, and Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. I guess the 22 team is kind of it's tough to look at them too much and take much away, but 2021, and I know this team's better, but they didn't play well at Florida. They blew out Missouri on the road, but they lost in Tuscaloosa. Close game with Kentucky. Heupel has had some issues playing on the road or coaching on the road, and you have to hope that plays in. Now, in terms of on field, I mean, the way I look at it is just, I think State in the trenches is going to need the best game we have seen from them to this point. I do worry about those matchups for State, but I think State's skill talent can make plays. Like I think State can hold up. Like State's receivers against Tennessee's DBs, I think State's receivers have chances. State's defensive backs against Tennessee's receivers, those guys have played well. I think can they continue that? So the matchup for me comes down to trench play. Can Mississippi State step up? Can they look more like the team we saw first half against Arizona State, at least defensively, is the bigger part for me. Defensively, how can you perform? And look, frankly, that night, State's offensive line, they didn't run block well, but they did a good job in pass protection against Arizona State. And ASU has some guys who can get after the quarterback. We know the same is said for Tennessee. So if you can hold up in pass protection, I think State's offense is going to have some chances. But can you get after Tennessee? Can you limit what they can do on the ground and not let them gash you? And can you get some pressure on Joey Aguilar before he gets the ball out? Those are going to be big keys. But this is going to be a really fun matchup. Again, biggest game in Starkville in many years. The home crowd is going to have to play a role for sure because the Vols are a better team. But I do think Mississippi State's got a chance to contend with Tennessee. And at the very least, this is a good measuring stick. The Arizona State game is sort of a measuring stick for where the program is at. This is a measuring stick for this season. Like, okay, how good can you be within the SEC? Should be a really fun game. We'll obviously be breaking it down more as we get later in the week. Again, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be joined with Tennessee, Voice of College Football, those guys to break down Mississippi State versus the Vols from their perspective and get some thoughts on the matchup and from more of an in-depth look at Tennessee from people who've been watching the team all season long. Thursday night, we'll have our call-in show, and we'll give our final thoughts on the matchup. We'll also get a chance to hear from each and every one of you. Would love to have a great group for the call-in show for the biggest game so far this season. That'll do it for us today. If you've not already, please give us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not, and if you could turn that notification bell on so you know when we go live, and share the channel. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. We will see you tomorrow night. Thanks to everybody listening. Thanks to Christian for hopping on. As always, swing your sword. Hail State.
Yes, sir.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.